How important your relationship with God during this journey? How important was that?
It was huge, and I don't think I fully understood it. It did not all manifest for me in such a way until I went through this journey to judge, is what I call it.
Journey to judge, okay.
And so I was in my role as special master for nearly 9 years. So I was like the little judge under the big judge, is what I call it, to simplify it for people. And I supported the elected judge in a lot of different ways in the court. And he was also another great mentor. He had an eye of me being his successor. And so he was very intentional about putting me in position and in places to begin building support and a base and to give me the skills I needed to do the job. So when he passed very unexpectedly in September 2022, literally in his sleep overnight, and nobody expected it. It became that thing of, is this the time for me to do this? I was scared because, as I said, I had the qualifications. I knew that.
Sure.
There wasn't anybody that was really going to have my resume from that standpoint. But I had, a history that came from, financial challenges and otherwise that I knew would be brought into the mix of things that could be damaging to me and be looked upon negatively. And I remember sitting in my office because a new judge got appointed for the position. I was not appointed. Somebody else got appointed to be the judge until an election.
Got it.
And the new judge told me, please, you can stay with me. I'd love to have you and keep you. And as I said, that was the most financially stable part of my life, right? So I'm like struggling with this, like, if I run out here and run for judge, anything could happen, right? But I had a plaque on a shelf that one of my mother's friends had given me when I started the job that had Isaiah 40:31 on it. And I looked up and I saw it. It says, those who wait on the Lord shall mount up on wings like eagles and shall run and not be weary. And I thought, I need to run. If I don't do it now, I'll never do it. And I felt like God was speaking to me in that moment. Throughout the whole journey, which was about 18 months, everything that happened, just my past being brought up, all of those things worked to my benefit.
Really?
So even
it all worked for the good.
So it was like, I knew that although I had taken a road that may have not been what God would have wanted for me, or even my family, my mother, it all came together. And it made me this unstoppable candidate that was the perfect person for the role.
Wow.
And nobody else had it.
Wow.
There was 4 of us in the race. Nobody else had it.
Yeah.
And it became a power. It became a strength.
That's so cool.
And I said, this shows people who God is. And so that's why I was so intentional about my investiture ceremony being so focused on God and who God is and what He will do. Right. Because that let me know He was always there with me. And when the time came, everything was going to come full circle for me.
Wow.
And that's exactly what happened.
Tell us about some of those experiences that you had to walk through that now you have an understanding as a judge working with family court, going through custody battles and things like that. Kind of tell us a little bit more about how those experiences equipped you for this position now.
Well, I think most of all, it makes me relatable.
Yeah.
One of my biggest things I would say is judging without judgment. And when you understand that the people standing in front of you were you at one point, could have been you,
absolutely,
then you deal with them in a way that shows some compassion. And you think about how you give them hope and inspiration in the process.
Right.
Instead of being transactional with them, or instead of, beating up on them, saying things to make them think they're less than. They didn't come to court for that.
Right, no.
And if we're talking about strengthening and building families, we should be strengthening and building the litigants and the moms and the dads that are coming in front of us in a way that they can see some hope in their future. Because a lot of times, for example, in my court, we do a lot of divorces. People are afraid. They don't know what their life is going to look like. They've been used to this, intact family. And so now it's like the resources are going to be different. The children's schedules are going to be different. How are these going to, and there's just a lot of fear. And so what I try to help people understand is, there will be some differences. But let's get a strong foundation for you individually and collectively as co-parents so that you can move on and have a brighter future for yourself and your children and have more long-lasting outcomes. And so definitely my experience is what resonated with people. People start telling me, you need to tell your story. I remember I met this lady and she was like, well, why should I vote for you? And I started going through, I've done, I had my family justice center and I was a special master. She's like, that's boring. And I was like, and that hurt me to the core, right? I was like, oh my gosh. But I had to become vulnerable. And I had to put it out there. But I began to realize that it was all a testimony, for God and who God is and who He's been in my life. And the more I began to do that, the more, the bigger my circle just became and my support became.
That's like the stuff you were proud of didn't interest them. It was the things that you weren't so proud of.
That's exactly what
ended up making a big difference.
Like shame and guilt. What I felt like was shame and guilt. That's what resonated with people. That's what people needed to know about me.
Great. So there's power in your story.
Share your testimony.
Share your testimony. It's amazing what God can do when we just give it to Him.